Congressman Richard Hanna is on the line right now. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Hey, Billy, how are you?
Good. Listen, it's what are we? We're going into March here, and talk about your position. I mean, you've caused such trouble. People just it is.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of people happy to see me go too.
Well, there may be some of those. I guess I don't think that's the case. But the fact is, they're scrambling to figure out who will forget taking your seat, but who's even going to run? It looks like another Democrat is getting in today, Kim Myers, and she's the Dick's Sporting Goods. Her father started Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yes, I understand that. I don't know her personally. I've spoken to her once. She's a legislator down in Broome County, and by all accounts, a pretty nice lady.
We're talking about also, there's quite a bit of a hullabaloo over, and I know you don't want to get into this, and feel free to tell me you're not going to get into it, but a lot of talk over the endorsement of Stephen Wells, and out of Madison County, as opposed to the endorsement of the Oneida County.
I find that fascinating. I have never, and I've had this job over 5 years now.
Yeah.
In the whole time I've done this, it's never occurred to me that this was anything other than one big district with very, very similar concerns, and in a very distressed state.
Yeah.
And simply part of the United States. I treat it that way. We're in Binghamton all the time. I have an office there and full-time people there, and I think that to create a conversation, a narrative that separates this district, the 22nd district, in any way is a mistake. But I do understand people would like someone from their own community.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But Madison County's one county over.
Right.
And Steve Wells, as I understand it, has a large business that's all over New York. In fact, I think it's all over the East Coast. Apparently, he did a fine job of presenting himself. He's not a career politician, and to be frank, the committee looked like it was overwhelmingly in his favor. I think he sold himself. He's a guy who is, I think, for the Republican Party, been a big contributor over time, and and I know George Phillips. George is a very decent human being.
He sent out a letter. You're mentioning how this is really one district, and you see it because it's your district.
I hear the same things. If I close my eyes and go from place to place, I hear the same thing from everyone.
Right. And he sent out a letter that somehow came up
big
here.
Mistake. I was kind of dumbfounded when I saw that fundraising letter. Somebody told me about it, that he referred to. It's about time Binghamton had.
Yeah.
And it's a mistake to set up that kind of narrative because it's not that way. And frankly, it's difficult to get elected with that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
You serve 717,000 people, and you got to get that through your head. And when you run perhaps on a more partisan basis, and you run on a Republican platform that hopefully represents fiscally conservative values that are more generally acceptable to the Republican side, I think. But beyond that, once you get the job, I get calls all day long from people who need help. Social Security, IRS, Veterans Affairs. I can tell you, Bill, in the 5 years I've done this, I've never once asked anybody what party they belong to.
Right.
It's not my business, and frankly, it's not my job, or do I care?
We have become so partisan. By the way, somebody writes in here, problems don't respect county lines. And
smart, well put.
What you're saying. But I've never seen it so polarized. And again, not on the topic what we're going to talk about, but what in the hell is going on in the Republican Party right now, and with Trump and all of this? It's Romney's coming out.
I was the first person, and some people won't like this, but I was the first person in the Republican caucus to say I couldn't support the guy.
Yeah.
The crude, insulting, the way he treated the issue over the Ku Klux Klan, his positions on immigration and the hyperbole, the absolute lack of a concise plan on virtually anything. It bothers me, and it also bothers me on a personal level. I got a little boy, and is this the guy I want him to look up to as president?
Yeah.
I don't know, not for me. And I think we deserve a much more thoughtful, deliberate person with, frankly, a much kinder way about him. Someone more of a gentleman or lady, for that matter. But it's not what I can. It's not a road I can go down. And
how do you see this? I mean, it is really dividing the party right now. How do you see this playing out? I mean, I guess we can't predict, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Mr. Trump could easily be the nominee. He's certainly well on his way. It's a matter of delegates. There's a few more states. He could cinch this up quite easily, and then I think we'll see what happens from there. It's difficult to tell, but I can tell you, for myself, I'll wait till it's over to see what happens.
Yeah.
I like Mr. Kasich out of Ohio. I think he's probably, of the people that are left, that person who is most balanced and thoughtful and with the most experience. I think that Mr. Trump has done extremely well in his personal life, and he's to be, that his success speaks for itself in that regard. But that doesn't transfer into everything you do.
Right.
I just his whole campaign. It seems to me to be the height of pandering in a lot of ways. You go into a crowded room, you tell them what they want to hear, they all applaud, and you leave.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. Andrew, if a listener question, go ahead.
This is a question I had. Do you think that's why he's not kind of up near the top in the polls, is because he hasn't been participating really in any of the bantering, the bickering, the
who we're talking about?
Kasich. Yeah. I mean, is that how?
You know what's happened to both parties? That, and you look at it in the primary process, the extremes, and I don't say this disrespectfully, but those people who show up in a primary are typically the most strident in their perspective, in their point of view, whether it's to the left or the right. So you see that the primary can be 300,000 people vote in a presidential year.
Yeah.
Right. So. But 15,000 people show up in a primary, or 20, or 30. And now with New York having this odd day that's only been done once before when I ran last time,
right?
You get the most motivated, sometimes people who are the most committed to an extreme position or angry or frustrated. All of that I get. But we should not. Regular people need to show up in primaries. The gerrymandering process has made it so that some people in some districts can't lose. They don't have, as long as they win a primary, they're successful because the general elections are almost moot. More Republicans, more Democrats need to get out the door in the primary and add balance to the party, because it really, if you look nationally, and if you look at the divisiveness in Washington, D.C., a lot of it is because these men and women down here can't lose as long as they take the most extreme position.
Right.
Now, that sounds crazy, but that's what gerrymandering's done. I love the 22nd District because it's a more balanced district.
Right.
It's a Republican district. I like that, too, but the reality is, a guy like me, I know I'm well thought of as a moderate guy on social issues and a fiscal conservative. I think I've been able to be myself, get elected doing that, and have a broader opportunity to reflect the views of more people and still be successful at getting elected.
We're talking to Congressman Richard Hanna. What about the Supreme Court nomination? What are your thoughts on that?
You got to be here because you hear both sides screaming across the aisle that we don't respect or honor the Constitution.
Yeah.
The Senate doesn't have to nominate anybody, but they can, and they absolutely should go through the process. The president has an obligation, constitutional obligation, to nominate. They're not going to like probably who he nominates, but they ought to at least have the hearings, go through it. And I've been here long enough so that I've watched both sides want to get everything they want. Well, that's not the way the world works, and it's not the way you create a peaceful, successful society that's reflective of the broad views of Americans.
Yeah.
And as long as everybody wants everything they want, we're never going to have peace, and we're never going to move forward. I mean, we don't have in the time I've been here, and one of the reasons I do get tired, frankly, and somewhat frustrated, is that the things that we want to do on immigration reform, on tax reform, on health care, everybody has their idea. Nobody's either side, and they're not willing to accept the ideas of the other person.
Right.
Compromise is dead down here. And if all we do is wait to own all three branches of government so we can get our way, that's not going to create the kind of peaceful society we want, or the outcomes that are going to do anything more than frustrate 50% of the people.
Yeah, I don't know how we've come to this point where compromise has become a dirty word, and how we expect that everything is going to be one way.
I don't know how that's what's happened, and and a lot of people want that. I was one of two who voted against shutting down the government here, and that was a nightmare, right? But I was criticized at the time. I haven't signed any pledges. We have probably the most independent record down here, and every time I vote on a bill, we write a detailed explanation. We hit 804 last night. I try to do this job as a solid member of the Republican Party who's broadly reflective of the need to come out with outcomes that don't create this constant friction between between people. And I think we've, to the best of our ability, we have done that. We got a bill on the floor that I wanted to talk to you about briefly because it affects so many people in the district. That would create a national registry for firefighters. What we know about volunteers, particularly, we have so many in our community, thankfully, that the incidence of cancers is way up among firemen and women. And so this would create, with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, a registry so we can kind of track this and understand it and know how we can help these people. And a lot of these people don't have the kind of insurance, they're not full-time. They're volunteers, but this would do it for everyone.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, we really the spotlight was really shining on these guys and women after 9/11. But it's not just an event like that. It's these everyday fires.
Yeah, but if you go back and look at 9/11 and the Zendraga Act, you see an enormous increase in cancer and other kinds of diseases from people the 30 or so thousand people that work there. We were a huge supporter of that, and that was not funded, but ultimately a bunch of us from New York, Peter King from downstate, planted our feet, said we're not going to move forward with anything until this was done in the omnibus bill, and thank goodness it got done, and these people are covered now for the next 75 years.
Good stuff. It'll be interesting to see how that gets turned into a polarizing
issues too. Opioids in our community are an incredible problem.
Yep.
So, you can find things to do that matter if you want to do something other than be a mouthpiece for the far left or the far right. And, you don't need to be on TV every day to get this job done. You need to be at your desk talking to people and communicating with your colleagues.
Congressman Richard Hanna, we appreciate the time.
Hey, what's the weather like up there?
Listen, it's going to be cold today, cold through the weekend, but 50s and 60s next week.
Good.
Looking good.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks so much. Congressman Richard Hanna. Christine with an update. Then we'll do our free money question of the day from the Hobica Law Firm. Give you a chance to win $100 in cash. Good morning, Christine.
Good morning. 3 more defendants in the Word of Life Church beating case were in Oneida County Court yesterday. 1 will be in court tomorrow. We'll have all the updates at WIBX950.com. And a reminder, the Republican presidential debate will be carried tonight live right here at WIBX 950.
So we're in the beginning of March, and I just want to take you back to last year. And you were complaining today that it's going to be 25 degrees. It's going to be kind of cold. But remember last year, 25 would have seemed like 70. With that, how many days in a row was it below zero last February into March?
Don't care to remember.
And here we are, I'm complaining about 25. I really can't. Partly cloudy skies. Sunny clouds today, 25. Tomorrow, 37. 38 for Saturday, the Heart Run and Walk. And then by next week, 50s, 60s. Who knows? Maybe even get up near 70 degrees next week. 8 above with some sunshine now at WIBX.